Hi everyone, and welcome to On Purpose Astrology. Hopefully you saw my last video about the new moon on the 1st of December. I thought I'd say a little bit more about Mercury and Mars retrograde. Mercury went retrograde on the 26th of November and it goes direct on the 16th of December, talking obviously 2024 this year. It goes retrograde at 22 degrees 40 of Sagittarius and direct at 6 Sagittarius 23. So it stays in Sagittarius. Sometimes Mercury goes retrograde and it goes back into the previous sign, but this retrograde is all in Sagittarius. So it really highlights Sagittarius, the sign of Sagittarius, and Mercury in Sagittarius. So what is Mercury in Sagittarius all about? Well, we know Mercury is the planet of communication, of travel, of mindset, of ideas, of opinions, of facts, all those kind of things, all those mercurial things. It's fast energy generally. Mercury is generally fast energy at its purest sense, and it can be very fast in Sagittarius, very spirited. So some of the things are brilliant about Mercury and Sagittarius, and some of the things, challenging things we need to work on. So when we go through this Mercury retrograde period, think about the themes of Mercury and Sagittarius, where we might be overdoing them and where we might not be doing them, where we might need to reflect and revise and rest and think about, where we might need to be a little bit Mercury and Sag, where we might need to be a little bit less Mercury and Sag. Whatever your Mercury sign is, if you have Mercury in one of the fixed signs, such as Taurus, Leo, Aquarius, and Scorpio, this Mercury in Sagittarius energy might be a little bit more difficult, more stressful, because it's a mutable energy. It's fast moving. It's kind of goes back and forth. It's variable. But Mercury Sagittarius really likes to see the bigger picture, perhaps not really seeing or paying attention to the smaller details. So there's a thing to reflect upon at this time. Where are you seeing the bigger picture and need to pay a little bit more attention to the smaller details, or the other way around? Where are you kind of you can't see the wood for the trees? That's the sort of opposite of that. So it brings these things to mind, Mercury. It's broad-minded, it's expansive thinking. It tends towards wisdom, or at least Mercury in Sagittarius thinks it's wise. So that can lead to kind of dogmatic and moralistic and judgmental mindset. Can be too direct. Where are you too direct? Where are you sort of saying it, I'm wisdom, I know everything, I'm a bit of a know-it-all, I'd say it like it is. And you say it very directly, and you think about, perhaps you don't think about how that might be hurtful, or where perhaps do you need to be more direct? Where do you really need to sort of tell it like it is? Another thing to think about, and use that kind of, rather than judgmental, perhaps think about being discerning. There are differences between judgmental and discerning. Discerning is more wise judgment, and judgment that is applied in a wise and more fair way. Sagittarius is known as fun, optimistic mindset. Taken too far, that can be idealism and not seeing things as they really are. So again, another thing to think about. Overgeneralizing is another thing for Mercury in Sagittarius. Sagittarius generally overgeneralizing. Again, that goes back to not thinking about all the details. Also to do with travel, travels of the mind as well, and education, the armchair traveler. It's associated with nature as well, Sagittarius. So it's a good time really for spending, any time's a good time for spending in nature, which can be really healing and can be really calming and really relaxing, because it's a restless energy, Mercury Sagittarius, that restless mind. So here is a few sort of details when it's talking about travel and ideas. It's about rethinking those ideas and those opinions, for exactly where, for example, like I said, where you've been a bit more dogmatic and I'm right, maybe you need to consider the other side. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe you need to sort of stop being, swayed by other people and trust in your own discernment. So these are things to think about during this Mercury in Sagittarius period. And it's going to be in the shadow. As I said, it goes back direct, it goes backwards from a couple of days ago, 26. I'm recording this on Thursday the 28th, and wish happy Thanksgiving to all my friends over the pond in America. By the way, I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful holiday. And then Mercury goes direct on the 16th, but it's in what's called its shadow until the 3rd of January. What that means when Mercury's in the shadow of its retrograde, it means that it's gone forward again, so from the 16th, but it's still going slow, and it goes back, it traces back over the degrees of the zodiac that it's gone back through. So the shadow of the period lasts until it goes back to where it started going backwards. If I'm making sense, it goes forwards into where it went backwards. So when Mercury in Sagittarius again reaches the 22 degrees of Sagittarius and 14 minutes on the 3rd of the 1st, then it's out of the shadow. Why is that important? Well, it means that Mercury's still going slow. Processes of Mercury are still going slow, which can feel a little bit frustrating. Perhaps it can feel a little bit kind of restless to get going, to get things moving on, particularly as, it's the beginning of the new year as well. And we think we've got to start again. Another thing to mention about before I talk about why this shadow might be important, because there's an important T-square that happens that involves Mercury Sagittarius. Just to sort of say that Sagittarius is about vision, and it's important to have a vision about what you want to achieve and where you want to go, particularly as we get towards the end of the year and the beginning of the new year. This is something we think about when we talk about that detail of it. The detail of that is, what are the goals? What are the things that you need to do to fulfill that vision, those step-by-step goals? So that's that balance between the bigger picture and the detail, isn't it? And what can help us with that, as I mentioned just briefly, this T-square here with Mercury in Sagittarius. Now, it occurs when Mercury is still going slowly, it's still going through its shadow period, even though it's direct. So exact on the 24th of December, 2024, we have Jupiter in Gemini square Saturn in Pisces. Now, it's a long-running square. We've already seen this square exact in August this year, and it's going to be kind of in orb really until July next year. So it's a 1-year thing. But on the 24th of December, it makes a T-square with Mercury in Sagittarius. So it's a mutable T-square. So it's talking about where we might need to make adjustments, where we might need to be flexible, and what hurdles and obstacles we need to negotiate, because Saturn's there, of course, as well. Now, why is this important? Well, first of all, because Mercury moves very quickly, but because it's in its shadow and it's still very slow, this T-square is going to last for about 6 or 7 days, from the 24th right the way through the Christmas holiday period, whether you celebrate Christmas or not, but that holiday period that most people recognize. And this Jupiter square Saturn is the first square of Jupiter and Saturn since the conjunction in Aquarius in 2020. So we might want to think back to 2020. What were our goals? What were our plans then? Where are we now? Because we're coming to the first square of this current 20-year Jupiter-Saturn cycle. The first square shows us where we need to get on track, stay on track, get back on track, or where we might need to make, as I said, adjustments. Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter is, as we know, it's that Sagittarian energy, isn't it? It is all about, ideas, growth, optimism, potentialities, possibilities, big ideas, right? In Gemini, big ideas. Saturn, as we know, is about retraction, sometimes constriction. It's about blocks, it's about lessons and tests. It tends to shrink things, make things feel smaller or more difficult. So when they meet, you kind of have that dynamic. And the best way, that dynamic between that vision I just talked about, grand vision that we might have of what we want to do and where we want to be and what we want to achieve. We might have even thought during the retrograde period of how we want to get there, how we want to kind of manifest this vision into goals. But then we have to do it in the real world. And this is where we can develop a sense of purpose. Very much a sense of purpose is a major theme for the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. So why is that? Well, that is because these ideas, these potentialities, these possibilities, this vision, we have to do the work, Saturn, to manifest it into the real world in a meaningful, useful way, Saturn. And then, as I said, Mercury, for around about a week over the holiday period, is going to be making a T-square there. So it's going to be Jupiter opposite Mercury with the axis of the T-square, Saturn in Pisces. So it really is kind of a time to slow down and really take some time and sort of try and breathe into any kind of frustration and urgency that we might have. It is that holiday period. For many people, it is a time when we do feel pretty tired and it's quite overwhelming. It's also a time for fun as well, for sort of family fun, but when we can really take time to sort of think and reflect over that holiday period, what do we want to achieve? Now, we look at T-square, and T-squares tend to describe where we need to take action, where we need to sort of make changes, make adjustments. But it's quite a helpful T-square in a sense. If we think about reception, I'll explain what that means for those who don't understand it, the way how the planets operate in the various signs. So Mercury in Sagittarius in traditional astrology is in its detriment, which means it's more difficult. It is more difficult, but really what that means is you have to find different ways to express it. Now, Jupiter in Gemini, Jupiter's great in Sagittarius, more difficult in Gemini, also in its detriment there. So we're seeing two planets, Jupiter and Mercury, in signs where they can't operate to their best, but they're in each other's signs and they're in an opposition during this period of this T-square. So they are supportive, they balance each other out. Additionally, Saturn is in Pisces, which is again one of the best signs along with Sagittarius for Jupiter. So by reception, so they like each other. Basically, it means they like each other. Well, Jupiter likes Saturn, okay, and Jupiter and Mercury like each other, if you know what I'm saying. So we have that support there. We have that mutual support, that mutual respect in that sky. So remember that mutual support and mutual respect, that we are supported. So I hope at this time you do feel supported. So that is Mercury retrograde and the T-square over the holiday period of Mercury to the Jupiter-Saturn square. I'm going to talk very briefly now about Mars retrograde. So Mars goes retrograde on the 7th of December at 6 degrees 10 minutes of Leo. So it overlaps with the Mercury retrograde by about 9 days. As I said, Mercury goes direct on the 16th of December, goes direct on the 16th of December, Mercury, and then, as I said, Mars in Leo goes retrograde on the 7th of December. It's a slower retrograde. It takes a bit longer because it's a slower planet, Mars, than Mercury is. So it goes direct on the 25th of February. But it does go back into Cancer. As I said, Mercury stays in Sagittarius, so it's retrograde, but Mars does go back into the previous sign of Cancer. I'm not going to talk about Mars back in Cancer in this video. I'll talk about it in previous videos because I want to keep this one quite short. So I'm going to talk about the period between now really, because Mars is already slowing down. This is the 28th of November. There's just over a week to go before Mars goes retrograde, but it's already slowing down already. So It's already energetically preparing us for its retrograde period. So when it does goes retrograde, it does start to go backwards in Leo, as I said, on the 7th, and it will be there. When does it go into Cancer? On the 7th of January. I've got these dates written down because I won't remember them all off the top of my head. 7th of January. So we've got that period of going back over Mars in Leo. So let's look at some Mars in Leo themes. Because once again, we can look at these themes for Mars in Leo, whatever our Mars sign, we can look at these themes and think, where are we not doing the more positive aspects of Mars in Leo? Where are we doing too much of it? What might we need to bring in? What do we need to think about? Where do we need to act more courageously? Mars in Leo, courage, the lion. Where do we need to find some inner courage? Courage, often we need to find courage. When we're feeling fearful, for example, we need to find courage. There's no courage really without fear. So where do we sort of step into our courage when we know something needs to happen, something needs to be done, or we're sort of trying to manage our emotions? Courage can help. So Mars in Leo might show us there. Where do we need more confidence? One of the purposes of Leo is to show us confidence. Mars is about action, taking action. Where do we need to take confident action? Or maybe where are we overconfident? Now, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the themes of Mars in Leo, but just to think also for this and also for the themes in Mercury and Sagittarius, think about how they might play out in the news, in our relationships, in our communities, at work, or life in general. We can look at these themes. It's a good way to sort of learn and really practice astrology, is to look for these themes outside of ourselves as well. Though really there's not anything, everything is interior really, but we can look outside ourselves to see these things and how they're playing out. So if it's not really touching your chart greatly, by not Mars in Leo isn't really sort of making any aspects to anything in your chart, you can still see these dynamics playing out. So let's dive a little bit more deeply into Mars in Leo. So Mars in Leo can be quite prideful. It wants to feel big, doesn't like to be made small. So it can be easily offended if someone makes them feel small. It's that ego thing. Think about people in public life, in politics and in public life, who might have Mars in Leo, and how they might want to feel grandiose, and they might feel very offended if anyone makes them feel small or hurts their ego. Think about what you do to make yourself feel bigger, It's now just, yes, that regal, where I feel regal, I feel special. I'm in the spotlight. I want to be seen. I want to be recognized. I want to be admired. So where are you shrinking yourself? Where are you making yourself feel and look smaller? Where are you holding on to anger and grudges? Leo is a fixed sign, talking about, Mars in Leo can be easily offended. It's pride or it's ego is offended. It can really hold a grudge. Where might you need to let go of some of those grudges? It's about seeing, we might need to reflect during this Mars in Leo period. Did that really matter? Is someone's opinion of me more important than my opinion of myself? Mars in Leo can be pushy. Where are we being too pushy? Where do we need to be a little bit more pushy? Where do we need to hustle a little bit to sort of get what we want? Mars is about what we want and how we go about getting it. It's also warm. Where can we bring more physical warmth? It's about physicality and sexuality and warmth and generosity, all these lovely things. Where can we bring more warmth into our lives? Where are we making or experiencing unhelpful drama? Mars in Leo loves drama. It's also about creative flair, thinking about our creativity. Now, Mars Mars in Leo in this retrograde might just simply be sort of saying where you need to be more confident. So it shows us where there's too much Mars in Leo energy, where there is not enough. Entitlement is another thing, Leo. You know, feeling entitled. Where do we feel over entitled? Where is there less, where might we need to strive for more fairness and balance, which is where we're going into the Aquarius energy, and Pluto's in Aquarius, which is all about fairness. But where do we feel the imposter syndrome? That can come into it as well. Do we feel like we have imposter syndrome? Oh gosh, I've been elevated into the spotlight. I've got this creative thing going on. I'm being recognized for it. Oh, I don't feel good enough. And other things to think about. So I won't talk about Mars in Cancer now. As I said, it's going to go back into Cancer on the 7th of January. That'll be the subject for another video, along with the fact that we've already had Mars in Cancer doing an opposition to Pluto at 29 degrees of Sagittarius very recently, earlier this month, November, when it goes into Leo eventually as well, back into Leo. Next year, we will be having a couple more oppositions of Mars and Pluto. Again, a longer, bigger topic, and I'll talk about that when I do my planning during these retrograde periods over the holiday. I'll be doing my planning and what I'm going to be talking about. But for now, we wish you happy Thanksgiving, happy holiday during the December periods of holiday, whatever you celebrate, whether you celebrate. I hope you have a lovely rest. I hope you have plenty of time to reflect during these retrograde periods. Quickly to mention that on my website, On Purpose Astrology, currently giving discounts on private consultations. Also, as well, I've already mentioned this in my last video, I did a podcast, which you can find on YouTube, about the astrology of psychic mediumship, and I'll put the really brilliant interview, really, I didn't say it's brilliant, but a really interesting interview and discussion on that YouTube channel about the astrology, as I said, of psychic mediumship. If you're interested in that, do check it out, and I will put the link inside the details below. Thank you so much. Lots of love as always, and thank you so much for listening. Bye bye.